Women Today, brought to you by citywing.com for your next flight away.
Hello and welcome to the Women Today podcast, the place where we select our favourite moments from the week and put them together for you to enjoy. This week, Beth's been away on holiday, so I've been keeping her seat warm for her, and we've had a busy week talking about Basking Sharks sport, and we're joined by a young singer and actress. And on Friday, we were joined in the studio by someone we were pretty excited to meet. Well, as I say, our guest today is an acclaimed film editor who's worked on films such as Nowhere Boy, Salmon Fishing in the Yemen and Seven Psychopaths. Oh, and of course, 50 Shades of Grey. Lisa Gunning, thank you for joining us on Women Today this afternoon.
It's such a pleasure. It's so nice to be here with you ladies.
Well, I've already mentioned some of just what you've done, but I want to talk to you first about your links to the Isle of Man, because you went to school here.
I did. I went to two schools here. I went to Buchan and King Bill's as well.
And what was it like growing up on the Isle of Man for you?
Well, I'm just so... I loved it in as much as I made brilliant friends here, one of which is just sitting over there. It's Tracy Leahy, who I went to school with, amongst other wonderful girls and boys I went to school with, and that was probably the best thing about being here. And I've got still, close relationships with them. And also because the island's so beautiful, and I've just got kind of memories of skipping through fields and getting up to no good with, people in backs of cars and things.
We haven't got to 50 Shades of Grey yet, Lisa.
It's just that kind of teenage bliss, and I remember that when I come here.
Well, we were talking just before we came into the studio, and you also remember Manx Radio.
I do. Oh my God, I know. The Love Line. There used to be a thing called the Love Line before, obviously, Twitter and Tinder and whatever anyone else was using these days. The kids these days use to kind of communicate love. We used to have the Love Line where we used to put kind of, requests.
Yeah.
And everyone would be tuned in listening to see if someone you liked would be making a request. I mean, it's so old-fashioned. I feel like I'm about 100. But
no, I'm with you. I remember it, Lisa. I remember
it. It got phased out probably 1,000 years ago, but it was brilliant.
Did you ever meet anyone?
No. It was all people we knew. I mean, it just seemed like it was only our class that used to do it.
Well, when you were growing up here, did you know that you wanted to work in film?
I did have an inkling. I did have an inkling. I got really into music while I was here. And, music's a very important part of filmmaking, for me anyway, scoring music and musical scores I used to listen to. And I kind of got into photography and, and I think I watched quite a few films while I was here. So I did... I suppose when you're a teenager, that's when you're a sponge. You're really kind of, receptive to lots of stuff. I hadn't made the decision to do it yet, but I had a couple of great art teachers first in the Buchan and then at King Bill's, and they really encouraged me to be creative. And I think that was definitely what pushed me in that direction.
Well, you studied English at university. Why didn't you go straight, off to film school?
I don't know. I think English lit is a really good place to start if you want to make films, because ultimately it's storytelling. So if you're interested in stories, literature is a great place to be excavating. And writing is so important in movies. Writing is structure of stories and kind of breaking those structures down and kind of messing around with them. So it kind of made more sense to do that and then start right from the beginning making cups of tea and running around with film cans in Soho and working my way up to learn the technical stuff.
Well, I read that one of the very first things you did was actually a porn film.
I literally, at the beginning, I think when you want to explore a career, I personally was prepared to do pretty much anything, like not do it obviously physically, but just to get my hands on any material and put it together and start experimenting with sequences. And it just so happened a friend of mine was making a porn film and I just thought, well, I might as well. I know how to do it. I know how to cut this thing together, so I might as well just do that for her. And
Did you do
that was
a
an
good job?
experience. I don't know. I haven't seen it for a long time, and in fact, it was pretty hard to watch. I remember thinking, God, it felt a little bit like you know, when you see programs where they've got people operating on each other, and you know, you've got kind of, you know, utensils and people being opened out and their guts all over the place. And not this is nothing to do with that particular film, but I always wonder how people can watch that over and over again and not kind of be kind of really grossed out by it. Anyway, so I don't remember much of that. I've kind of phased that out of my memory.
Just black it out.
Yeah.
Black it out. I mean, fair enough. So explain to us then exactly what a film editor does, what your kind of role is on a film.
Well, first of all, God, there's so many things involved that people might not necessarily know. I mean, obviously, the basic thing is you're taking the material that's been shot, usually totally out of sequence. So you might get the last scene first, the first scene, you know, in the middle, and all over. So it's all over the place, and you make judgments and you cut together the material in a way that sort of feels like it's obviously scripted, but there's a lot of decision making you have to make about performance, about timings, about making bias on particular characters, whether they are feeling particularly intense or not. You know, you can definitely modulate a lot of. There's so many things you can alter the course of using an edit. So the basic function is you make an assembly of the material as per the script, and then as you go along when the proper filmmaking starts, you're smashing that up and telling the stories in the best way possible for the idea of the film. So you're kind of reworking things. So there's a lot of building things and smashing things up, and building things and smashing things up, and then eventually you get this kind of thing that feels right. And that's the thing everyone watches, so they think, oh, it was always supposed to be like that. But invariably it's very different to how it started out.
Is that ever a bit annoying, I suppose, that you kind of start with quite an idea of what you want to create, and by the end it can be completely different, as you say?
No, because I think the film tells you what it wants to be and how it's most comfortable, and of course you put it through a lot of process, like focus groups or audiences, and you sit with an audience and watch an edit of a movie, and you can feel when something's working or not, either if it's supposed to be funny or sad, or if people get bored. You can kind of really tell what's going on in the room, like an animal almost, an instinct. People start shuffling around if there needs to be sort of an acceleration at that point, and there's quite a few tricks you can pull out the bag to accelerate the story and to basically tell, to use the film language to kind of make the story sing, if you know what I mean.
Who do you work the most closely with? Is it the directors? Is it the actors, the actresses, when you're trying to get it across? Who do you think that is?
Well, in theory, it's the director. I think each project's very different, depending on the characters involved. In other words, different directors have different strengths, and some of them really like to be in the edit and be very involved in that, and work very closely with the editor, and some directors don't, and I've worked with both kinds of directors, and it can be a very different experience. So did I just answer the question there? What was that?
Who you work the most closely with?
Oh yeah, the director.
That's right. And it must be quite challenging with characters, like getting on with each other as well, because sometimes you must have conflicting interests of what you think and what they think too, but you have to go with the director's say.
Well, it's kind of interesting, because it's like the director and, you know, everybody's sort of, it's almost like giving birth. You're really invested in this thing, and you want it to be the best it could be, and everyone's being creative and having ideas, and it's really, you're quite self-conscious. You know, it's very fragile. People are very fragile when they're being creative, and so you have to empathize and be quite almost like a therapist sometimes. I feel like you kind of, an editor sits and does a lot of listening, but at the same time, anyone can use the equipment. Anyone can pick up and use a bit of software, but the only reason why I'm employed really is to have an opinion. Otherwise I'm useless.
Well, Lisa Gunning, thank you ever so much for being our guest this afternoon. I can't wait to talk to you in more detail a little bit later in the programme. Now, our guest this afternoon began the Manx Basking Shark Watch just over a decade ago. She's also a mum, a nurse, and she's rather well travelled. Jackie Hall, thank you so much for joining us on Women Today this afternoon.
Pleasure to be here.
Now, we're going to talk in more detail about the work you do tracking basking sharks a little later. But like I say, you have done a lot of other rather interesting things throughout your life. So why not start at the beginning? You were an RAF baby.
Oh yes, a child of the forces, nearly a gypsy. I moved so often as a child.
You lived in 30 homes by the time you were 30.
That's right.
What was that like, growing up like that?
Well, for me, of course, it was normal. I got very good at, you'd have that box of things, and by the end of the first day you were in your new home, the pictures were on the wall, the rug was on the floor, the books were on the shelf, and it was home.
You spent some time in Singapore. What was that like?
Oh, very formative. I was there from 8 years old to 11, and my father was a very keen, and still is, a very keen fisherman. So I had the great pleasure of being introduced to mangrove swamps.
What's
Now,
it?
most 8-year-old girls would run a mile from a mangrove swamp. Not this one. By the time I'd been in the mangrove swamp to start with, I pretty well knew I wanted to be a marine biologist.
You knew that at that age?
Oh yes, I've never been anywhere more fascinating.
So how then did you get into nursing?
Oh well, that was quite simple really, because for 3 years, 8 to 11, I'd been quite clear about wanting to be a diving marine biologist. But when I came back to England to a school in County Durham and had my careers pep talk from the headmaster, and he said, "What do you want to be, Jacqueline?" And I said, "I'd like to be a diving marine biologist, sir." And I can see him today. He leant back on his chair on 2 legs, which every 11-year-old knows is forbidden. Looked at me and he went, "Do go away and think of something sensible to do." And so I became a nurse.
That was the sensible option.
It was the sensible option, and I adored nursing, but I still wanted to be a marine biologist. And I went to study marine biology when I was in my 30s.
That was 1990?
Yes, just about, yes.
How scary was it to give up nursing and go back to the books?
It wasn't scary at all, because in fact I'd never left the books, because while my children were little I'd studied for 8 years with the Open University to get my health sciences degree, and so really that I'd never stopped studying. And leaving nursing was hard. I'd worked in the neonatal intensive care unit, and leaving that job was so hard. But actually going to university to study marine biology, I'd wanted to do it since I was 8.
Could you
That
hear
wasn't scary.
8-year-old you inside going, yes, finally?
I still can.
Is that what keeps you going?
Oh, I have a total passion for wildlife in general, and particularly marine wildlife.
It's fascinating. In 1991 then, your husband Simon and your son James died in a kayaking accident. Can you tell us what happened there?
Oh, it was just awful really. We were a very active family. If we weren't scuba diving, we were kayaking. And this particular day, I had just started my marine biology degree. I couldn't go with them as the sensible attenuating force. And I was revising for an exam. And they went over a weir. And as any kayaker knows, you don't go over a weir. But it was meltwater, and the weir in question's round a corner, and I guess they just didn't see it till it was too late.
How old was your son at the time?
My son was 14, my husband was 35.
And they were both experienced kayakers?
Very, yes. But it doesn't help when you go over a weir, not in the slightest. All of you out there, don't go over weirs in kayaks.
Is it possible to say how you coped going through such an unimaginable period?
I think you live day to day when something like that has happened to you and your family. What I always say to people who are going through something awful like that is, if you can just breathe in and out and then do it again, then you're on to a winner. But you just live from minute to minute, hour to hour, and then after a while it gets a bit better. And after a while longer, it gets quite a lot better. That's all you can do.
You also have 2 daughters. Was that
do.
the advice that you kind of gave them?
Oh, I didn't give them advice. Really, we all just muddled along together because that's what you have to do. My daughters were only 10 and 12, and it was hard for me at 35. I can't even begin to imagine how it was for them. Very hard to cope with a bereaved child. Very hard.
Well, as you say, you were studying at the time, and then you went back again to studying in 1995.
Yes. Well, I never really stopped.
Have you ever stopped studying?
No. No. And, of course, now with the sharks, I have to study all the time to keep up with tagging technology and things, and we're producing scientific papers and things like that. So it's quite good, my brain is kept active.
Do you never just think, put these books away and just watch some rubbish TV?
No. Oh, I still watch some rubbish TV.
Do you find, and I don't mean to be harsh in any way, but do you find as we get older it becomes harder to study in any way at all?
No, I don't, because I've never stopped. I can imagine that if you did stop for a long time and came back to it, it would be hard, but no, not at all. Having said which, I had been out of nursing for 23 years when I woke up in the middle of the night about 3 years ago and thought, I'm going to do my return to nursing course and go back to nursing part-time. And that was hard because, of course, nursing is academic now. And although I've been doing academic things for that 23 years, it was different kind of nursing that I'd done before. The academic bit, it's hard.
What made you decide to go back to nursing?
I don't know. I just woke up in the middle of the night and I'd been thinking for a while that I'd missed it. I'd missed it a lot. And I had breast cancer in 2006. And so I'd spent most of a year in and out of hospitals of various kinds and just remembered what incredible job nurses did and how much I missed it. And frankly, in the intervening 23 years of just doing marine biology, no coral reef, no basking shark had ever said thank you. And that lovely person-to-person relationship that you get with your patients and with other nursing staff, I rediscovered the fact how much I enjoyed that. And it's just been a joy to go back part-time.
Well, now we're going to turn our attention to sport, as on Friday, teams from a wide range of disciplines will fly off to Jersey for the NatWest Island Games. And for the volleyball team, I think it's fair to say it's an especially exciting year. For the first time since the 1980s, the Isle of Man is putting forward a women's team, with a squad of 10, including reserves, making their way to the Channel Islands. The team have been training together for the last 2 years, and Jo went along to their final practice ahead of the Games. She asked coach Dan Smith how many teams will be competing.
In the ladies volleyball, there's 11, so there's 2 groups there of 5 and 6 in number-wise. The girls are in the 6th group. They've got the number 1 seeds in their group, and I think that's first game of Faroes, so it's a tough game for them to start off with, but hopefully the nerves will settle and they should be able to prove some points out there.
So would you say they're your main competition, is the Faroe Islands?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think they're favourites for the gold medals, but all the teams out there are going to be at a strong standard, so this is a good test for the girls now to see what level they've actually reached for all their 2 years of training.
And how many years have you been going to the Island Games?
Myself, I've been since '97, the first one was in Jersey, but this will be the first time the girls have been since the Isle of Man hosted it in 1985, so that's 30 years ago.
Wow, that's a huge amount of time, isn't it, in between? So how have you managed to get a team together to go?
We started up the club about 3 years ago. Obviously it was the social side of things, and there seems to be quite a lot of interest created from that. And then we found that there was players that actually played in national leagues in the UK, and we've coached some girls now up to that standard as well. So there's been a good interest, and obviously with the sponsorship from the local company Dandara, then it's helped us get to this position we're in now.
And tell me the difference between you've just been whacked in the back of the legs with a ball, brilliant. Tell me the difference between ladies and gents volleyball.
The only difference is the height of the net. So men's height is 2.42 and ladies is 2.24. So there's 20 centimetres difference. That's the only difference between the two sports. So there's quite a few of the girls that'll give the lads a good game as well. So
So do you train in mixed training then?
no, we separate the train just because of the net height. We don't want people to get the wrong sort of training and used to the wrong height net. Tonight it's our last session before we head to the game, so we're going to hold a little mini tournament and just it's more of a relaxed training tonight really. We don't want any injuries or anything carrying into the week.
And what would you like to come away with?
Oh well, you only go to competition to win, so I'd like to come away with a medal. But as long as the girls put 100% out there, then I'll have no qualms about it.
What type of coach do you think you are? Do you think you're quite strict with them?
They'd probably say I was quite strict. They don't like my warm-ups and things like that. But on a whole, I think we have a really good team attitude, so we're looking forward to it.
Hi, my name's Jimmy Hughes.
Jimmy, what part do you play in the ladies volleyball team?
Well, I've come in on the management side and partly to help out on the training side as well. Basically, Dan Smith, who sort of started everything, asked me would I come along and help, especially when we knew the Ireland Games was coming up, just to help out, just to take a little bit of pressure off him, go to meetings, sort all the paperwork, sign out. So I've had to sign a lot of bit of pieces that I don't really understand, but for Jersey. But but it's just to help out really more than anything.
Tell me about the organisation of something like this. Does it take an awful lot of organising?
More than you probably think. A lot of stuff in the background. Like I say, a lot of talking to sponsors, trying to get sponsorship. We've done quizzes, we've done backpacking. We've probably got about 10k, I think, which is sort of what the target was that we wanted to collect, and that helps kit, training, all the bits and pieces we need.
Hi, I'm Lisa Quilliam, captain of the ladies volleyball team for the Island Games this year.
How long have you played volleyball for?
Oh, on and off for about 4 years total, I suppose, but with lots of breaks in between.
How did you get started with it?
On the island, I just heard on Facebook. Before that, I played at school, and I played, and when I worked, I found a volleyball team, so lots of stopping and starting for me.
What do you think is the difference between the male and female game? I mean, do you think that the men generally tend to hit the ball harder?
Well, they do. They've got a higher height of net, so they have to jump a lot higher, and they do hit the ball higher. But obviously, we on the lower net, we can't just hit as hard as the boys if we really try hard. As long as we've got the lower height net.
What's the banter like between the men and ladies?
Yeah, it's quite good. Yeah, it's all good fun actually. It's very social volleyball. That's the nice thing about playing a team sport like this. Very social. Everybody's very friendly, but still quite competitive. So.
And keep getting hit by the ball. It's coming at me in all directions. I'm having to watch myself here. How are you feeling about going away to the Island Games next Friday?
Oh, very excited. It should be lots of fun. We've got a great team. The women, good camaraderie between us all. Lots of fun. We have lots of fun as well. And it's a first for us all, really, to go away like this.
Any nerves?
Yeah, slightly nervous, but I'm quite excited as well. It's the first time I've been away from my kids for 9 years. So.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. So it's a holiday in a way.
Well, yeah, nervous and excited to be away, but nervous to leave them, and then excited about the volleyball. So it's all good, really.
Lisa Quilliam, captain of the volleyball team. Jo, I'm glad you managed to get away from their practice without being hit too many times by the ball. I think it's right. We wish the team all the best in Jersey, and fingers crossed for a medal. And to all the athletes going out, it's just going to be an incredible experience for them. It's 29 minutes to 3 now. Well, as we heard earlier, our guest today is Howard Green, the chairman of the Pahar Trust, Nepal. We've just been hearing about women and sports, and women's equality is something very, very important to the Trust.
Absolutely, yeah. When we establish a school and where it's going to be built and so on, first and foremost, it's about the families and the children helping and to support us with smashing aggregate, getting bamboo, to do scaffolding and so on. The second thing really is to make sure that the school adheres to gender issues and caste issues. And it's something that's very dear to my heart, really, about girls having equal opportunities in the developing world. And part of that links back all the way to my mum. Like many people from the Isle of Man, my parents, my grandparents, lived in Cumbria in Keswick, and decided to emigrate to Canada, to the New World. And off they went to Saskatchewan. They were establishing themselves quite well. And unfortunately, my grandmother died, where my mum had been born out in Canada. So with brothers and sisters, my grandfather resolved he just couldn't cope. So he had to come back to Cumbria, where he had an extended family to help and support him bring up the children. And my mum was quite a clever lady, and she was awarded the maths prize at school and was one of the best violin players. And she was awarded a book called The Black Tulip, and that was for the maths prize. Unfortunately, though, at 14, because her job was to help and support her brothers go to school, she had to leave and went to work in a bobbin factory. And it's so sad because the potential she had was incredible, but she had to relinquish that opportunity. And this is not my great-great-grandmother, this is my mum, really. So girls' education and the opportunities we give in Nepal is particularly important to us.
You keep saying opportunities, and I guess it is about teaching them that there is a life for them, and it can be the same as the opportunities open to their male counterparts.
Yeah, I go to Nepal as a learner, not as a teacher, and for Nepal to move forward as a country and develop itself, it has to have an educated populace. I think it's fair to say that historically girls have not had the opportunities that boys have, and therefore there's an untapped source there, and the potential is just incredible. And if you educate the mother, you educate the family.
Do you also have to teach the boys that these girls are equal as well, I suppose?
I suppose, yeah, but that actually comes about as well. We do a huge programme of teacher training, and we would like to do more. It's something that I want to focus more on as well. And through teacher training and opportunities, and a lot more teachers, ladies coming into teaching as well, so they're very influential, and it grows and grows from there, really.
Mother said, straight ahead, not to delay or be misled. I should have heeded her advice, but he seemed so nice. And he showed me things, many beautiful things that I hadn't thought to explore. They were off my path, so I never had dared. I had been so careful, I never had cared. And he made me feel excited, well, excited and scared.
Well, our guest today, as you can hear right now, is a 17-year-old local singer and actress who has some exciting plans for this summer. Since 2010, she's won the Sheffield Plate, the international song contest as part of the Pan Celtic Festival, and she's been crowned both Young Singer of Man and Young Actor of Man. Michelle Jameson, you've done all of this and you're still currently studying for your A-levels at Castle Rushen High School. First question, you're not bunking off right now, are you?
No, I do have a free period, don't worry. And they do, that I did sign out on going to Manx Radio, so it's fine.
Good, just keeping us out of trouble. Well, as I mentioned before, you do have some exciting plans for this summer. But before we get to all that, I like to find out a little bit more about you. So I guess first question, when did you discover that you can actually sing?
Oh, I can never remember when I discovered that I can sing. I'm not sure I could ever definitely sing. It's taken quite a lot of hard work before to get to where I am now. But at the age of 6, I started singing lessons, and I've had them ever since. I remember my first appearance at the Manx Music Festival, and it's all sort of really gone from there.
What is it about music that grabs you, that keeps you singing, keeps you performing?
I think it's the thrill of it, and when you hear a new song, and when you hear just the intro to something, and it ignites something in you. It just makes you want to join in and communicate that with other people.
Do you prefer singing in a studio like we just heard, or do you prefer the kind of buzz of performing on stage, performing live?
That's a difficult question, actually. It's two very, very different things. I've done a lot more live performing than I have recording. But I don't think you can ever beat the thrill of performing to an audience. It's something, the excitement that it builds and the adrenaline within you is something completely different to recording in a studio where you can go over and over and over again until it's as perfect as you can make it, really.
Do you get nervous?
I used to be very, very nervous, and I think the more things I've done, the less nervous I've got. But I do tend to get nerves for different type of events. If I'm performing in front of a very small group of people and I know them, that is just the worst thing in the world. Oh, not good.
Well, I mentioned that you won the International Song Contest as part of the Pan Celtic Festival, and you're actually singing then in Manx, and you sing quite often in Manx. What is that like?
Yeah, I actually did a full concert yesterday, all in Manx, and it's something that I've grown to do since I've been doing singing lessons. Really, it's tricky because I don't speak Manx, so that's an extra hurdle to climb. But I tend to learn it very phonetically, and then learn the meaning of things and put it to the music. But as much as I can possibly get to know what the song's about and whatnot.
Michelle, do people expect you to speak in Manx because you can sing it?
Yeah, I went to the Pan Celtic Song Contest this year, and this man came up to me and started talking to me in I didn't know what he was saying, and I just thought I couldn't understand his accent. I had to ask him to repeat it like 3 times, and then I was like, oh, it's Manx. Yeah, I don't know what you're on about. It's a bit embarrassing.
You ever been tempted to have some Manx lessons?
Yeah, no, definitely. As a matter of fact, I had a bit of a lesson with Ruth Kegan the other day, and she's given me lots of tips on words and how endings sound and whatnot. But it's a very, very difficult language, and I don't take to languages very easily. And another thing is, learning on the Isle of Man is also quite difficult sometimes because teachers disagree. There's people on the island that disagree on how things should be said and whatnot. So I'm tempted, but maybe in the future.
Well, we've talked about your singing, but you also act.
Yes, yeah. That's something that's come along with the singing, really. I never set out to be an actress or whatever. I didn't set out to be a singer either, but just as I've progressed in singing, I took drama lessons, did my LAMDA exams with Carrie Hunt at Broadway Theatre Company, and then just from there I've had more opportunities to act in plays and things like the Manx Passion that happened as part of the Island of Culture with Jan Parmasea last year. That was fantastic, and then just more things have come off that, really. And then of course the Young Actor of Man in 2014 was fantastic, and something that required an awful lot of work with the acting and took me a good few years before I got anywhere close to a winning spot.
So if you had to choose then, singing or acting?
It's tough. I always tend to go for the middle range, and I like to sing but act at the same time.
And that, of course, is where musical theatre comes in.
There we go. It's like it was meant to be.
And it kind of ties in together, doesn't it? The singing and the acting. Because when you're singing, it is a form of acting, isn't it?
Yeah.
How you're having to perform.
Yeah, you can't sing without acting. I've just been watching the Singer of the World competitions, and they just go on and on about how important it is to convey the song, and you can either be a singer, you can have be a singer, or you can have a nice voice, and I think there's a difference.
You never been tempted by dancing?
I like a bit of dancing myself. It all ties in together, really. I've always loved musical theatre, and musical theatre, you need to be a triple threat if you've got...
Are you a triple threat, Michelle?
Well, I do some dancing as well. I do ballet and jazz and tap. So I love a bit of a boogie.
I'm exhausted. How easy is it then? We've talked about the fact you are 17, you're still at school doing your A-levels. How easy is it to get started in the creative arts on the island? I mean, how much is there for young people who are still at school?
The Isle of Man is fantastic for the opportunities they give you. If you were in England, you just wouldn't have the opportunity to perform at the Gaiety, and in the productions that are offered to the island, it's fantastic, and there's such a strong base of teachers and other people who are just as interested as you, and it really gives you the grounding blocks to build on.
And how inspiring is the island?
So inspiring. The surroundings itself is brilliant for singing, and it gives you something to think about, something to talk about if you ever go away with it. But I almost think that the talent that is on the island, especially the older generation of singers, is so inspiring, and you aspire to be them.
Yeah, and on Saturday, I noticed that you did a 1940s tea dance. Is that something that you would normally perform in?
It was my first 1940s era concert, but I was invited to sing there by the Southern Befrienders, and it was lovely. It was lovely I love singing to that generation because they tend to know all the words. They probably knew them better than I did.
What did you sing?
The old favourites we sang. We'll Meet Again, Anything Goes, So in Love.
I so want you to break into song now.
Another time.
So what is the dream then, Michelle? Where do you hope to see yourself in the next kind of 5-10 years?
It's tricky. I do change every day, but I would love to go to a drama school of some form, whether that be slightly more focused towards the acting side, because I don't tend to see myself as a musical theatre performer as much as I did, but I'd love to do presenting and be almost on the other side of the desk.
Well, I think we'll call it a day there before Michelle tries to take the seat off me just as I get it off Beth Espy. And as we've been hearing, our guest today is film editor Lisa Gunning, who has returned to the Isle of Man this weekend for a school reunion. Lisa, I keep saying film editor, but I think it might be selling you a little bit short, because you also have written, produced and directed. So tell me about Tales of Us.
Oh, well, that was really good fun, because basically, I've been editing for a long time, and I've sort of been sitting in that room sort of cutting together movies and sort of thinking, God, why didn't they shoot it like this, and why haven't I'm missing this bit, why didn't they think of that? And it's very easy to do that when in hindsight, but I guess I just wanted to feel what it was like to have to collect the material and actually be the director. So I have always wanted to do that, really, and editing is very linked to directing, because obviously you're there's a lot of storytelling in the editing, and that is very important in the direction as well. So it came about because my partner Alison Goldfrapp needed some films, really. She needed some videos for her new album called Tales of Us, and we had sort of quite grand ideas about making a film. So instead of making normal pop videos, we kind of thought it would be how interesting it would be, because the album is very cinematic in its sound and in its storytelling, how it would be quite good to explore making something a bit longer form. So I made 5 little stories and linked them all together into a 30-minute piece. Alison's in some of them and not in others, and we did it on quite a shoestring. And working together was really great, because the material was so beautiful, the music was so beautiful. I'm so inspired by it. Well, as you say, it was all of Goldfrapp's music, so I think it's only fair that we hear some. This is number 1 by Goldfrapp. You mentioned, of course, that you are with Alison Goldfrapp, and in fact you are engaged. Yes. Engaged to be married. Yeah, I'm getting all bashful now. You can't see me going red. And you say it was nice working together. Was it really? It actually was. It was amazing, because she's a proper artist, and I'm fortunate to be with someone who I love what she does, and I think she's so clever in as much as she thinks a lot about story, which I'm obviously obsessed with, and her music is very, it does lend itself to the visuals, and kind of just inspired a lot of ideas, really, and because we live together, we're able to kind of bounce ideas off each other, and and the idea of being able to make film together was really just so exciting, and such a great opportunity for both of us. No domestics on set? Oh yeah, we disagreed on things. Yeah, we totally disagreed, but she's a proper collaborator. So if she can see a good reason behind my argument, she'll give in course. I've got ways of manipulating.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Has music always been important to you? You keep mentioning it. Has it always been important to you and always been important to the films that you're editing?
It has, yeah. We were just talking actually earlier about music in terms of there's something really interesting about music when it usually feels right because it has a structure of its own. And sometimes when I'm cutting a scene, like a dialogue scene, words, people talking to each other, have their own music. And there's something about when you settle on an edit for a scene between 2 or 5 or 10 people that feels right in your ears, as opposed, sometimes I'll cut just for the sound, or sometimes I'll just cut for the visual. And there's music in that, and sometimes if I put score over the top of a scene and it fits, that tells me it's right somehow. Music is a really good skeleton sometimes for things.
Tells you that you've got the pace right and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, or the feng shui of it feels right or something. It's kind of more of an animal's thing. I mean, it's not scientific at all. It's just when something feels right. I suppose it's like relationships. If it feels, you're not quite sure why, but you like that. It just fits somehow.
Something just works. Well, we've mentioned music, and there is another film we want to talk about. So why don't we set the scene?
Like it's magic.
Oh yes. Oh, everyone's feeling a little raunchy in here now. Thanks,
I love
guys.
that song.
We have mentioned music, and we couldn't possibly have you on the show, Lisa, and not talk about 50 Shades of Grey, because you were one of the 3 editors on the film. I've got to ask, first question, what was left out?
Oh, well, I mean, I'll tell you, all the best bits were in there. All the best bits are in there. Nothing, you didn't miss anything.
Had you read the book before working on the film?
Actually, do you know what? I hadn't read the book. I have to confess, I hadn't read the book before I was asked to cut the film. But I did read it after, obviously, when I was asked, and read it a couple of times to really get my head around it.
Hours and days and weeks in that editing room. Did you ever get a bit hot under the collar?
Well, I just think back, not particularly. No, no, because I guess actually a couple of times when something started really working, and I felt a little bit like, oh, actually, that feels a bit good. Maybe there was a little bit there.
You knew when it was working.
I think so. When it started. A couple of sequences started, coming together, and sorry, pardon the pun. It felt like, maybe
other people are going to get this too, maybe.
Perhaps.
Well, what was it like working on a film that had so much buzz about it, even before filming began?
Well, there's a lot of, I suppose that's a certain pressure, but what's interesting is there's you're thinking about the audience that already exists, and the fans are extremely loyal to the book, and obviously they absolutely love it. So you have, it made me very respectful of what was originally there. I mean, that pressure was interesting, but the other thing is that I think the film might make some kind of advances on the book in terms of the female character feels a little stronger, which I'm very pleased about.
And that was an editing decision.
There was obviously the actress Dakota was brilliant, and so she felt strongly to do that. Sam was the director, was very keen on pushing that as a direction. And I was coming from the cutting room in that way too. So the combination of those things lead to hopefully a sort of stronger female, more kick-ass character.
When the film came out in cinemas across the world, though, there was some substantial backlash. There, be it from women's rights groups, domestic violence charities, and those criticising the way BDSM was portrayed. I just wondered what that was like for you.
Well, by that time, I was finished. It had finished, and I was on to something else. So for me, it didn't really make any difference. I'm not sure. I'm not a big expert on the politics of it. But not everyone's going to be happy with everything all the time. That's all, you know. And I think it was fairly respectful, as much as it could be. But you know, there's a lot of fans out there that love it. So you know, it's a balance between doing something for people that love something, and you know, doing something to second guess a backlash group.
Well, Joe and I actually went to watch it together.
And romantic.
And Beth.
And Beth as well, and Beth. And I think it's fair to say that both ways, I know, Alex, you said the same, that we were kind of pleasantly surprised by it.
Wow.
It was an easy watch.
Yeah,
let's just say.
It doesn't tax,
easy on the eye.
It doesn't tax the brain necessarily. But yeah.
Talking about easy on the eye, I just wonder, do you think they chose the correct actor and actress to portray the characters?
Well, I can't imagine it without them now. Initially, yeah, I mean, I didn't have any doubts, you know. I mean, Dakota is a really good actress, and I thought she was very good in it. And, you know, Jamie's, you know, he's a sexy boy. I think he did all right.
I thought, why on earth did they choose somebody that had chickenpox scars on their chest? I couldn't understand why when he took his top off. And then I realised there was actually more to it.
Yeah. I can explain what that is.
It was a complicated plot, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Complicated.
He'd had a tough life.
Well, it came out on DVD this week and is set to become the fastest selling DVD of 2015. I was just wondering, because you've obviously seen it again and again and again, and every angle of it and every possibility of the film, will you be buying the DVD and sitting down and watching it again?
In a word, no. I've definitely seen that enough now. I'm sort of onto. It's funny because, you know, you spend time working on something and everyone's none the wiser because it's all bubbling away inside this behind closed doors, and I had my intense time with the movie, and now I'm on to other things, so it kind of I don't really want to, or maybe I'll watch it again in 5 years or something, but for now I've had my fill of it. I think I'm not going to be buying the DVD.
So what is next for you, Lisa?
Well, I've started, obviously with the Tales of Us stuff, started directing a couple of years ago, and so now I'm developing that, and I've got a few projects sort of bubbling away. I mean, I could go into massive detail, but there's 3 movie feature film scripts that I'm developing at the moment, and I'm doing commercials and things like that, directing commercials here and there. So I'm just like, things are sort of bubbling away.
With the commercials, I mean, that's where you kind of started, I suppose, in the kind of advertising world. Does it feel like you're returning to your roots a little bit?
It does, actually, yeah. It's quite nice because I always use commercials as a means to being able to make good decisions between movies, because obviously doing a movie is like a year or a year and a half of one's life, and it's a long and very big decision to take something like that on, big commitment. So I was very fortunate enough to have started in commercials so that I could, when a movie's finished, I could just do a few of those just to keep going while I was waiting for a good script to come along, instead of having to take on another massive film after the last one's finished, you know. So it's given me a lot of freedom. So I really think commercials have been great for me and taught me a lot. And now I'm directing them. That's also fun too. So I'm tuning into things I learned a long time ago.
And how important is it to you to take people under your wing and to kind of foster the next generation, I suppose, of film editors?
Massively important, because I'm so grateful for anyone that had faith in me to let me do this, you know. So I do a lot of mentoring and talks and things like that. And also because editing is quite a mysterious and invisible art, so not a lot of people know about it, or the ins and outs of how it works or how magical it is. So I like to sort of broaden its horizons as a craft. And kids these days are very kind of savvy with technical stuff, so they like to hear that stuff too.
What's your one tip then for anyone who's listening who wants to get into the world of editing?
Make films. Just make them with your iPhone. See if you like it. See if you can do it. And cut stuff, because you can do it now with you don't need to become a member of a guild or get into a massive room with lots of equipment like we used to in my day. You know, I mean, it's hard. These places were hard to get into when I was in my youth. Now you can literally just pick up your iPhone and do it.
And chuck it on YouTube.
Yeah, that's what I'd do right now if I was starting out.
Well, Lisa Gunning, thank you ever so much for being on Women Today this afternoon and letting us ask you if you ever got hot under the collar on 50 Shades of Grey.
You're welcome. It's such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks as always to our amazing guests, and as ever, it's never too late for you to get involved. Head over to Facebook, find the Women Today page, and you can comment there, or follow us at MR Women Today on Twitter. And you can listen again to the full programmes on manxradio.com, or join us every weekday live from just after 2 o'clock.
Women Today, brought to you by citywing.com for your next flight away.